The era of the Great Depression in the United States was not only a period of economic decline and instability but also the era of American gangsters, Bonnie and Clyde, Pretty Boy Floyd, and others. However, none of them came close to John Dillinger, a bank robber and murderer without a drop of sympathy. He played well on the nerves of the FBI. His story was rich, but lasted only 31 years. He spent most of his life in constant hiding from the police and in prison. However, in just 14 months, he has become the #1 criminal in the United States and a top priority for the feds. It's all about the style of his robberies, which made it possible to clean up 24 banks. And this is not to mention shops and police stations.
Dillinger's gang was very different from other robbery gangs. They were very meticulous when preparing for the next business. Sometimes they even tried to cheat. For example, openly come to the bank and declare that they are from a security company. Or say that they are shooting a film and just came to see the location. People believed them.
Dillinger was born in July 1903 in Indianapolis, Indiana. His family was from the middle class. His father is a grocery seller and his mother died when John was only 3. Since the father was constantly at work, his sister took care of the baby. As soon as John went to school, it became clear that he would be a problem child. Teachers constantly complained about him. Either he would get into a fight, then steal something, and when he grew up a little, he even began to mock the younger ones. Subsequently, he decided to leave school and get a job. Surprisingly, his employers always described John as a good employee who could achieve a lot. Nevertheless, Dillinger Sr. decided in 1921 to move with his family to another city, to Mooresville. He thought that his previous residence had made his son so restless. But the new home did not change the situation. John, on the other hand, is even more immersed in fights and petty thefts. In 1922, he was first caught trying to steal a car.
John attended Sunday school. After classes, everyone loved to play football. John was just one of those who liked to recruit a team rather than join someone. He himself determined his role in the game. This demonstrated his leadership traits well. The last word should always have been with him.
In 1923, Dillinger was drafted into the Navy, but in less than a month, he escaped from there. He was dismissed in disgrace and John continued his civilian life. Now he didn't even think about looking for a job. He knew perfectly well that robbery is easy money. His first serious case with armed robbery took place in 1924. Together with a friend, they decided to fill their pockets with cash. $50 was stolen from a local store. The young robbers could have escaped punishment if Dillinger had not attacked the salesman, an elderly man. Not far from this church, John Dillinger robbed a grocery store. Before getting into the car and fleeing the crime scene, he threatened the seller with a revolver, and then hit him on the head with an iron pipe. The next day, both were arrested. John knew that he was facing a prison sentence, but he did not expect that the sentence would be harsh. The judge gave 10 years. For Dillinger, that was the end. For the father, it was a disappointment. He almost on his knees begged the judge to shorten his son's term. But to no avail. And who knows how Dillinger's fate might have turned out if it were not for this imprisonment. Perhaps he would still be able to get on the right path. But no, this imprisonment will turn him into a bloody killer and an elusive robber. And among people, he will become Robin Hood and receive the unofficial title of the most beautiful criminal of the United States of that time.
The decision to throw him behind bars for 10 years was not the best. In prison, he established connections with other criminals. Therefore, when he came out, he had already formed his gang.
Dillinger spent from 1924 to 1933 in prison. It would seem that the attacker is isolated, all can sleep peacefully. But during this time, John also met his comrades in spirit. Let's just say he learned from the best. Top caliber robbers taught him how to rob properly. A new world opened up for John. It turned out that real money is spinning in banks. In almost 9 years in prison, he thought every day about how he would turn his attacks and which banks would be his target. The puzzles in his head fit perfectly. There was only one thing left, to find a team that he could lead.
Among all the imprisoned robber friends, Dillinger will be the first to get out of prison. Later, he organizes an escape plan for his comrades. When everyone is released, they will become known to America as the Dillinger Gang.
In the Michigan prison, where he was serving his sentence, real professionals in their field were imprisoned. They informed him, and he was a diligent student. There is absolutely no doubt in my head that the criminal was made out of him by those with whom he was sitting.
His father got him released early from prison. He created a petition, managed to collect the required number of votes and submitted it all to the court. Dillinger had good behavior in prison, which is surprising as a person with such a complex character. Therefore he was released without any problems. In May 1933, just at the peak of the Great Depression, salaries were very low and it was almost impossible to get a job. John realized prison experience would help him get back on his feet. So wasting no time, he got down to business. His first bank was in a month. June 21st, Dillinger stole $10,000 from the National Bank in New Carlisle, Ohio. At that time, with such money, you could be considered almost a millionaire. But this was not enough for him, and in the same state he robbed another bank. Things were only going up.
Most people don't have a very good idea of how banks were robbed in those days. It was truly incredible. In broad daylight, they would run inside, keep everyone at gunpoint, someone would press the alarm, which would off the robbers, and they would start firing a machine gun at everything around. The robbery in such cases lasted only a few minutes.
But he was not yet destined to calmly bathe in money. He was quickly found. Dillinger knew how to rob, but not cover his tracks. When he was brought to prison, the police did not yet suspect that they were dealing with a professional who had everything thought out to the smallest detail. For the armed robbery of 2 banks, he faced 12 years behind bars. Despite this, Dillinger remained as calm as a snake. He didn't even try to escape.
During a search of Dillinger's things, a document resembling an escape plan was found in his pocket. John declined to comment. 4 days later, exactly as written in the document, 8 of Dillinger's friends escaped from a prison in Indiana. They used shotguns, which were brought into their cells. While escaping, they killed 2 guards.
Dillinger knew that the friends he had once helped escape to Indiana would not be left in debt.
When he was held in Lima, Ohio, his friends simply paid him back. They impersonated police officers to transfer Dillinger to another prison. When they were let inside, they took out their weapons and began shooting everyone. The sheriff was killed.
The gang is assembled. They could get down to business. They lacked only one thing, an arsenal. Before proceeding with new robberies, the attackers cleared several police stations. They took out machine guns, and bulletproof vests. That's all. In full equipment, it was possible to go into battle with the bankers. After robbing 3 financial institutions, Dillinger changed solidly. He began to drive expensive cars and wear exquisite suits. A woman named Evelyn Frechette, a waitress and singer, drew attention to him. They met in October, and in November an affair swirled. But they were not destined to be together. At least because of John's lifestyle. He has money and adrenaline from robberies in his head. She has a big stage. 2 completely different worlds. And although they loved each other, they will not have a happy ending. Nevertheless, so far Dillinger has managed to evade justice. All because of the specifics of the robbery.
In most of the robberies committed by Dillinger's gang, police officers were on the scene. But you need to understand that the criminals took hostages. Law enforcement officers were powerless. They couldn't shoot. All that remained was a chase. Dillinger took hostages but released them after escaping the cops.
Meanwhile, Dillinger was wanted for the murder of the sheriff. To this day, the police believe that he was the one who shot him while fleeing Lima. However, Dillinger himself never admitted this. He said that he was the initiator of the murders, commanded, sometimes he had to kill on his own. But he did not touch the sheriff. Nevertheless, his photo hung in almost all institutions in the surrounding states. And the cops still managed to catch him along with the gang. This time, law enforcement officers were well prepared. He was taken to prison in a motorcade of 13 cars. But while under close surveillance in the cell, Dillinger managed to escape again. With a pistol. Some believe that Dillinger had a weapon with him from the very beginning. The official version says that John carved a gun out of wood and smeared it with black shoe polish. Threatening the police with a mock-up, he forced them to release him, locked themselves in the cell and calmly left the prison premises. However, researchers believe that Dillinger simply bribed the right people.
The case handler was bribed. This was done by Dillinger's lawyer, who was also Al Capone's lawyer. Capone himself was imprisoned at the time, but he even ruled Chicago from prison. He helped Dillinger escape prison because he needed him. And he just came up with this fable with a wooden gun so as not to frame Al Capone. So that no one thinks that the mafia is somehow involved in this case.
He managed to get out. And it was this event that became a turning point in Dillinger's life. The FBI began to hunt for him. And all because of the police car.
Dillinger made a mistake that cost him his life. He stole the sheriff's car and drove it through Indiana, Illinois, heading to Chicago. In this way, he violated the National Motor Vehicle Theft Act, which he transported across the borderline of several states.
A prison break and a nationwide search forced the entire gang to lie down for a short time. The robberies stopped for a while. Dillinger met with Evelyn and went to Mooresville to visit his parents. Evelyn was driving the car because the FBI, together with the police, had placed a patrol everywhere on the ground. There was no reason to detain her because she did not take part in the robberies. Therefore, the gang calmly reached Mooresville and spent several days there. New plans for robberies were also drawn up there. They needed money and weapons. Since Evelyn didn't want to get involved in crime, she decided to return to Chicago, but it wasn't destined. Halfway home, she was pulled out of the car and arrested by the FBI. Dillinger will never see her again.
Evelyn never once told law enforcement officers about Dillinger's whereabouts. They could not knock out information with her. Meanwhile, John and the gang decided to free her from police captivity. They robbed several police stations, stocked up on an arsenal, but understood that in case of failure, Dillinger and his henchmen would face the death penalty, so the gang abandoned this idea.
Agent Melvin Purvis was appointed responsible for the hunt for Dillinger. He was known in narrow circles for the fact that no intruder he chased could escape from him. After his interrogations, they usually came out with knocked-out teeth and broken ribs. So, in April 1934, he received a call that a group of unknown people, very similar to wanted criminals, were resting in a small complex, known at that time as Little Bohemia. Groups of law enforcement officers arrived instantly. In the same way, the shootout began quickly. The walls of the wooden house turned into a sieve. But Dillinger still failed to be caught. He did not engage in a shootout with the cops, but simply got into the car and ran away. Police feds not only let the most wanted robber in, but also injured 3 civilians. As a result, a flurry of criticism poured on them. For Purvis himself, the issue of John's arrest became personal. He did not like criticism, and even more so, the unprofessionalism of his colleagues.
When the FBI tried to track down and catch Dillinger, they set up posts wherever they could. The patrols hid near his father's house and even near my parents' apartment.
But Dillinger did not even think of returning to his native place. He was well aware that the visit to his parents could be his last. Therefore he hid in Chicago, changed his name and slightly appearance, his hairstyle and grew a mustache. In general, he even planned to have plastic surgery and moved to Mexico. But it didn't come to that because the feds got to him before he had time to pay for the operation. Nevertheless, he was able to start a new novel even without plasticity.
Rita Polly Hamilton, former waitress and prostitute, John Dillinger met her in one of the Chicago clubs. He introduced himself by his fictitious name Jimmy Lawrence. He dated her until his death. This unexpected acquaintance will be the end of it.
The fact is that Polly Hamilton had a friend Anna Sage, a Romanian who illegally lived in the States. After learning that Polly had an affair with John Dillinger, she decided to turn him in. For 2 reasons. According to information that will help catch John, she wanted $5,000. Secondly, if he was caught, she demanded that the FBI close the case of her deportation to Romania. The feds did not think about her demands for a long time, they agreed instantly. Planning for an attack on Dillinger began. On July 22, 1934, Anna invited Dillinger to the cinema for a melodrama, it would seem. An ordinary friendly visit. In fact, after the session, a Fed's trap awaited John. They completely surrounded the area, sitting in ambush in every corner. The signal to capture the robber was supposed to be a cigarette that would be set on fire by the head of the operation, Agent Melvin Purvis. Anna played perhaps the most important role in this mission. After Dillinger changed his image, it was difficult to recognize him. So they had to go outside after the movie was shown, and the man walking next to her would be Dillinger. And so it happened. At 10:40 p.m., the agents shot him in the back. The last bullet entered the back of the head and flew out through the right eye. Dillinger died. All American newspapers wrote about the death of the most famous bank robber. Anna became the mysterious woman who helped the feds eliminate criminal number one. As agreed, she was paid $5,000. But this still did not help her avoid deportation. It turned out that the FBI does not have the authority to do this. Meanwhile, a myth appeared in the newspapers that the woman walking next to Dillinger was wearing a red dress. It was like a sign for agents. In fact, there was no red dress.
Anna Sage informed the agents that she would wear an orange skirt to stand out from the crowd. And so it happened. The story of the red dress is a media invention to give the story a new color. After all, a headline with a red dress will better draw the reader's attention to the article.
By the way, in 2009, a biographical film about John Dillinger was released with Johnny Depp in the title role. So the scene with the murder of the robber is described in exact detail. But except for one moment when he has already been shot in the head, John lies down and whispers some phrase in the agent's ear. Later, it turns out that Dillinger asks the agent to tell Evelyn Freshed that he loves her. In fact, this has never happened in history.
Several eyewitnesses of Dillinger's death saw that his lips moved. He dared to say something, but no one was around. No one heard the last words of the murdered robber.
After Dillinger's death, members of his gang were caught and shot for a month by law enforcement and the feds. Evelyn Freshed did not testify against her former lover, but wrote a memoir that helped her get to know him better and his lifestyle. Dillinger's family does not consider him guilty of crimes. They flatly refused to believe that he was capable of killing someone on purpose. Nevertheless, it is on his conscience 10 killed people and 7 more wounded. For people, he was a legend and a folk hero about whom songs were composed. For intelligence agencies and law enforcement, it was another high-profile case in their collection, boosting their self-esteem and the image of the authorities.